As I left my parents' home that day, I thought I was walking toward love, but in reality, I was walking into a lifetime of tears. I was a woman from a royal family, yet I chose a man who had nothing. I gave him a house, a name, a life, and he repaid me with betrayal. I carried pain in silence. I cried in corners, and my little daughter watched me wipe my tears. This is not just my story. This is the truth of many women who loved too deeply, trusted too blindly, and paid too heavily. Before we continue, I want to know, where are you listening from, and what time is it right now for you? Morning, night, or somewhere in between? Share it with me in the comments. I was born into a house where honour was not just spoken about, it is lived. My father's footsteps carried authority, my mother's words were soft yet weighty, and my family name opened doors even before our faces were seen. People whispered, our surname with respect. My brothers carried themselves like princes, my sisters and I were treated like jewels hidden behind the curtains of modesty and dignity. My childhood was carved with comfort. I remember marble floors that stayed cool even in the burning summer, tall wooden doors that creaked with the weight of history, and servants who hurried at the sound of a single call. When I walked in the courtyard, I wore embroidered dresses that glistened under the sun. To the world I had everything. And yet, I was restless. Even as an infant girl, I noticed things others did not. I saw that my life, though rich in comfort, was poor in freedom. Every decision was made for me: what would eat, what I would wear, whom I would meet, and how I would sit. And deep inside, I craved one thing my royal house could not give. Me. The warmth of love that is chosen, not arranged. I used to watch women from the village pass by our gates. They carried water pots on their heads and firewood on their backs, and yet they miled. Their clothes were plain, their lives heavy with struggle, but there was a certain fire in their eyes, a freedom, a strength. I envied them. I thought that they may not have silk curtains or silver plates, but they live their own lives. They love who they want. They cry without shame. They laugh without fear. It was perhaps this silent longing that made me notice him, Theon, who would become both my dream and my wound. He was not like us. He had no name, no wealth, and no future to offer. His hands were rough, his clothes simple, and his eyes ordinary, and when he spoke, it was as if he poured honey into my ears. He knew how to touch my heart with words that made me feel seen, alive, and unwanted. I was a young girl then, innocent, foolish, and blind to what the world really was. To me, he was not poor. To me, he was rich in love. And wasn't love all that mattered? That's what I believed. That's what I told myself as I listened to him whisper promises of loyalty, of forever, of a life that would be ours alone. My parents saw through him. They warned me. My father's voice still echoes in my ears. A man without wealth will eat your wealth like bread. A man without honour will use your honour as his weapon. But my heart was deaf. I was stubborn. I told myself that love was greater than wealth, that loyalty could grow even in poverty, and that my sacrifice would be remembered as noble. I dreamed of building him a home, giving him dignity, and showing the world that my choice was right. I thought I was brave. In truth, I was naive. The night I told my parents of my decision, my mother cried until her eyes swelled. My father's silence was heavier than thunder. My brothers looked at me as if I had betrayed our blood. But I was determined. I convinced myself that my love was worth leaving everything behind, my Amelie, my comfort, my crown of respect. And so, I walked away. I left the marble floors for mud walls, golden plates for clay bowls, and silk dresses for plain cotton. But I did not care. I thought I had won love. I thought I had found a treasure greater than all the jewels of my royal house. Oh, if only I had known then what I know now. If only I had understood that sometimes love is not love, it's hunger. Sometimes a man does not love you. He loves what you give him. And when you can give no more, he turns his eyes elsewhere. But at that time I was blind. blind with hope, blind with love. I had given up my world for him. Little did I know that one day he would give me nothing in return, but tears. The day I chose him was the day I thought I had chosen love. In truth, it was the day I had chosen a lifetime of wounds. When I left my parents' home, my hands were trembling, but my heart was steady. I told myself that love needed no wealth, no walls, and a no blessing. Love, I believed, was enough. I was young, foolish, and so sure that the fire in my chest could keep me warm forever. I remember the look in my father's eyes when I walked away. He did not shout, he did not curse. His silence was worse than 1,000 storms. My mother wept, clinging to me, begging me not to go. "A daughter does not trade a palace for a hut," she cried. "Don't let your heart blind your future." But I had already made my choice. He stood there, poor and small in his torn clothes, but in my eyes, he was a hero. I thought I saw loyalty in his eyes. I thought I saw a promise. I was willing to give him not just my love, but my very life. And so I gave him a home. I gave him respect. I gave him dignity. I gave him the kind of life he could never have dreamed of without me. At first, it felt like a victory. I would look at him and think, "See? I was right. My love has lifted him. My sacrifice has made us whole." For a while, I believed I had proven everyone wrong. But slowly, cracks began to show. He was restless. He was not satisfied. The man who once looked at me with hungry eyes now looked past me, as if searching for something else. His words, once sweet grew harp and dismissive. His silences became louder than his speech. And then, the affair. The day I learned of it, I felt my heart stop. He, Theon, for whom I left everything, for whom I betrayed my parents' trust, for whom I gave a royal daughter's honour, he'd betrayed me with another woman. Not once, not by mistake, but again and again, as if my love was nothing, as if my sacrifice was air. I remember sitting on the floor of my room, my hands pressed, against my chest, trying to keep my heart from breaking out of my body. Tears poured, but they brought no relief. I thought of my parents. I thought of my old home, where safety and dignity had been mine, and regret burned me like fire. I whispered to myself, I left a palace for this. I left my parents for this man. I gave him everything, and he gave me betrayal. Still I endured. I told myself maybe he would change. Maybe he would remember my sacrifices. Maybe he would one day look at me and feel shame. But instead of shame, he grew bolder. Instead of repentance, he grew crueler. I became a shadow in my own home. I was the woman who cooked his meals, washed his clothes, and bore his children, Buttony. His eyes, I was nothing. Yet I stayed. Why? Perhaps because I was too broken to return. Perhaps because I had nowhere else to go. Perhaps because society is unkind to women who walk away. Or perhaps because of my children, who were my only light, in that endless darkness. But even there, pain followed me. My elder son, then I had carried in my womb with hope, grew into a man who raised his hand against me. His anger, his fists, his cruelty, they were me in ways his father never could. I used to cry silently when he left, holding my face in my hands, praying that no neighbour had heard the sound of his blows. My daughter, just little girl, you say don't watch me. I would try to hide my tears, but children see what mothers try to bury. I still remember her eyes, wide and frightened, staring at me as tears rolled down my face. What pain it is when your child becomes a witness to your suffering. And yet, in this sea of sorrow, there was one soul who saved me, my younger son. He was my angel, my comfort. When others hurt me, he was the one who wiped my tears. When the house felt like a prison, he became my freedom. He loved me when others hated me. He respected me when others dishonoured me. He held my hand when I felt I had no strength left to stand. It is strange, isn't it? A mother gives birth to all her children with equal pain and an equal love. But life has a way of dividing them. One becomes your wound, another your healing. When I look back at those years, my heart still aches. The regret is sharp, like glass in the chest. I had everything once: army, a family, a palace of love and dignity. I gave it all away for a man who did not value me. I made a choice in the blindness of youth, and I paid for it with the tears of a lifetime. Still, I survived. I do not know how. Perhaps God carried me when I could no longer walk. Perhaps my younger son's love kept me alive. Perhaps a mother's heart, though broken, learns to beat even when shattered. This was the choice I made. A choice that stole my joy, my respect, and my peace. A choice I regret with every breath. But this is my story, and I must tell it. A home. That word once meant safety to me. Warmth, belonging. I had given him not just 4 walls, but a kingdom compared to what he had before. He came to me with nothing, and I gave him everything. Oof, respect, children, a life he could never have built on his own. And yet, my home became my prison. I was blind in the beginning. Women often are. We do not see what we do not wish to see. I noticed his late nights, his sudden silences and his excuses. I told myself he was tired or stressed or distracted. I clung to the hope that the man I had loved would not betray me. But the truth always finds a way to enter, even if it must break the walls of your denial. I still remember the day it shattered me. A whisper, a glance, a cruel confirmation from someone who pitied me enough to tell me he has another woman. My blood ran cold. My hands trembled. I wanted to scream, to tear the sky with my grief. But instead I stayed silent. I always stayed silent. That is the curse of women like me. We wallow our screams so no one outside hears them. At night, when he came home, I studied his face. Did I not give him enough? Was my sacrifice too small? Had my love grown tasteless in his mouth? My heart wanted to ask, but my lips refused. I was afraid of the answer. Days turned into weeks. The whispers grew louder. I no longer needed confirmation. You saw it in his eyes, in his distance, and in the coldness of his touch. He no longer belonged to me. My love was not enough. Do you know what betrayal feels like? It is not just pain, it's humiliation. I would look at him and remember the life I had left behind. My parents, my siblings, my royal home. And I thought, I traded all that for this man who now belongs to another. The shame burned me more than the grief. I began to cry at night when no one could see me. I would press my face into the pillow so my children wouldn't hear. But children always know. My little daughter would sometimes wake up and find me sitting, in the dark, my tears soaking my hands. She was too small to understand, but she would climb into my lap, touch my face, and whisper, "Ami, why are you sad?" I would force a smile, swallow my sobs, and say, "Nothing, my love. Nothing." But her innocent eyes told me she knew more than I wanted her to. It broke me, not just that he betrayed me, but that my children witnessed my suffering. A woman's wounds are heavy enough for herself. When her children see them, the pain multiplies. Still, I endured. I told myself that maybe he would come back to me, that maybe the affair would fade. I stayed silent for the sake of my children, for the sake of a home I had already sacrificed too much to lose. But silence became my curse. Instead of shame, he grew arrogant. Instead of regret, he grew cruel. He began to treat me not as a wife, but as a burden. I became invisible in my own house. He would sit at my table, eat the food I cooked, and sleep under the roof I had given, and still treat me as though I were nothing. Sometimes he would look at me with disdain, as though my very presence irritated him. I, the woman who had lifted him from poverty, was now treated as less than dirt. I remember one evening I had prepared his favourite dish, desperate attempt to win back even a drop of the affection that once flowed so freely. He took a bite, put down the plate, and without looking at me muttered, "It tastes like nothing." That was the night I realised. My ove, my care, my sacrifices, they're all invisible to him. The betrayal wasn't only in the affair, it was in the way he stripped me of dignity, in the way he made me doubt my worth, in the way he forced me to cry in silence while he walked free. And yet I stayed, not out of love anymore, but out of resignation. I had burned every bridge when I chose him. Where could I go? To whom could I return? My parents' home was closed to me. I'd left them against their will. My pride would not let me crawl back, and even if it did, would they take me? No. So, I stayed. And my home, once built on dreams, became my cage, but amidst the pain, one light never left me, my younger son. He saw my tears, though I tried to hide them. He would come to me, hold my hand and whisper, "Ami, I'm here." He was just a boy, but in his small words lived the strength of a man. He carried me when no one else did. If my husband's affair was the wound, my younger son was the bandage. Without him, I would have drowned in my sorrow. With him, I managed to breathe. Even now, when I close my eyes and think of those years, I feel both the sting of betrayal and the warmth of my son's hand. One broke me, the other kept me alive. This was my home, a place I had built with love, but which love abandoned. A place that should have been my safe haven, but became the stage of my humiliation. A place where my husband's betrayal echoed in every corner, but also where my child's love whispered, "You are not alone." And so I lived, half broken, half alive. Regret is not just a memory. It is a shadow that follows you everywhere. It does not sleep. It does not rest. It sits beside you when you eat. It whispers to you when you pray, and then it crawls into bed with you at night and presses its weight on your chest. My greatest regret was not simply that I married him. It was that I had turned my back on the people who had loved me most. My aunts. I still see my mother's tears when I told her I would leave. I still hear my father's silence, the silence of a man too wounded to even speak. I thought time would soften those memories, but instead, they grew sharper with every betrayal I endured. Each time he hurt me, I remembered their warnings. Each time I cried, I heard their voices in my head. "Don't do this, daughter. Don't leave us for a man who cannot protect you." And yet I did. I traded the arms of my parents for the arms of a man who would later throw me into the fire of betrayal. I traded a palace for a prison. I traded respect for humiliation. And worst of all, I traded the pure love of family for the false promises of a man. Sometimes, late at night, I would imagine what life would have been if I had listened. Would I still have been laughing in the halls of my father's house? Would I have had a husband who honoured me, children who respected me, and a name that remained untarnished? These questions burned me, but they had no answers. Regret does not allow you to go back. It only forces you to live forward while carrying the ashes of what you burned behind you. The years passed, but the wound stayed fresh. I could never forgive myself. Yes, he betrayed me. Yes, he humiliated me. But I was the one who made the choice. I was the one who walked away from protection into danger. I was the one who gave him the chance to break me. That truth was heavier than any beating, any insult, any betrayal. I remember looking at my children and thinking they not ask for this. They did not ask for a broken mother, a father who did not respect their mother, or a house where silence was filled with pain. My regret was not only for myself, but also for them. They grew up in a home built on tears. They saw what no child should see: their other crying, their father absent, their family broken. There were days I would go to the corner of the room, hide my face in my hands and cry silently, thinking no one noticed. But my daughter, my little innocent girl, always noticed. She would walk in quietly, stand near me and watch. I tried to smile through my tears, but children are not blind. They know when their mother is drowning. And my elder son. How can I speak of him? He became a reflection of his father's cruelty. The boy I had nursed, the boy I had prayed for, the boy I had loved beyond measure, hero into a man who raised his hand against me. Every slap, every push, every angry word from him cut deeper than his father's betrayal. I used to think, perhaps this is my punishment. Perhaps God is showing me what happens when you choose wrongly. But my younger son, he was different. He was my consolation, my saving grace. He loved me when no one else did. He respected me when no one else cared. He would hold my hand, wipe my tears and tell me, "Ami, you're not alone." Sometimes I think God sent him as an answer to my endless prayers. He was the one thing that kept me from collapsing completely. Still, regret never left me. Even when I smiled at my younger son, even when I held my daughter, even when I pretended to live, inside carried the weight of 1,000 mistakes. People think regret fades with age. It does not. It only deepens. As my hair grew white and my body grew weak, regret became my companion. Every wrinkle on my face seemed to whisper, "You made the wrong choice." Every ache in my bones seemed to echo, "You should have listened." Sometimes, when I sat alone, I would talk to God. I would whisper, Ya Allah, forgive me. Forgive my blindness, forgive my arrogance. I thought I knew love. I thought I knew life. But I was wrong. I was a fool. And yet, in those prayers, I also found a strange strength. Because regret, though it breaks you, also teaches you. I learned that love without respect is poison. I learned that sacrifice must be for those who deserve it, not for those who betray it. I learned that a woman must never trade her dignity for empty promises. This is the regret I carry. This is the lesson my life has written. If anyone were to ask me today, was worth it? I would close my eyes, let the tears fall and whisper, No, it was not worth it. They say children are the reflection of their parents' hearts. But mine became mirrors of my broken marriage, one reflecting cruelty, one reflecting compassion, and one reflecting silent sorrow. My elder son was born into my tears. From the very beginning, he carried his father's shadow in his eyes. His fists grew heavy before his words did. The first time he raised his hand at me, he was barely a teenager. I remember that day vividly. The und of his palm against my cheek echoed louder in my soul than the sting of his skin. I stood frozen, not because of the pain, but because it was my own blood. My own child, the one I had carried in my womb for 9 long months, the one I had fed with my own hands, the one I had prayed for every night. He looked at me as if I were an enemy. My heart cracked in ways words cannot hold. His father's poison had seeped into him. The way his father spoke to me, disrespected me, and then treated me like I was less than human. Mayan had learned it all, copied it all, and then delivered it back to me. Many nights he would shout, slam doors, and even push me aside as if I were nothing. And I, like a wounded bird, folded my wings and remained silent. What could I do? A mother does not fight her child. She absorbs the blows, hoping the storm will pass, but Allah, in His mercy, gave me another son, my younger son. Oh, he was the light in my darkness. While his elder brother burned with his father's fire, this one carried water in his soul. He would wipe my tears with his little hands, whispering, Ami, don't cry, I am here. How? Could a child so small become my protector? Yet he did. He grew up with maturity far beyond his years. When my heart was breaking, he stitched it with kindness. When my body was tired, he carried the burden of care. Sometimes I think Allah placed him in my life to remind me that not all sons become their fathers. Some sons become their mother's strength, and then there was my daughter. My sweet little girl, too young to understand, too young to fight, yet old enough to see. Her eyes became wells that stored the image of her mother crying in the corner. She would sit quietly, clutching her doll, pretending to play, but her gaze never left me. Children see what we think we hide, and I wonder, even now, what scars my tears carved on her soul. There were nights when I sobbed quietly in my room, thinking the children were asleep. But when I looked up, I saw her small figure standing at the door, her face pale, her lips trembling. She wanted to come to me, to hug me, but she was too afraid of her father's wrath, too afraid of her brother's anger. So she just stood, There, watching, learning what silence meant for a woman in pain. This was my home. One son beating me, one son healing me, and one daughter watching me. A battlefield where love and cruelty wrestled daily. Sometimes I wonder, did I fail them? Did I fail myself? Or was this simply the price I paid for loving the wrong man, for marrying against wisdom, for thinking love could conquer everything? Every child carried a piece of my story. My elder son carried my regret, my younger son carried my hope, and my daughter carried my sorrow. Together they were my punishment and my redemption. And yet, through all of this, I remained a mother. I cooked, I cleaned, I smiled when I had to, and I prayed silently for their futures, because no matter how much they broke me, they were still my children, and a mother's heart, no matter how bruised, never stops loving.